Hi, I'm Tom, and this is Adult Game Reviews. This week I took a look at Wings of Empire by Droid Productions, the developer of Love of Magic and Morningstar. First, we had fantasy and Love of Magic. Second, we have biblical with Morningstar. And now we have sci-fi. It seems like Droid wants to hit all the genres. I'm guessing historical fiction will be next. I'm sure Emily will love that.
Hello? This is Downton Abbey.
You can play a droid game and pretty much know it's droid just by looking at it, from the UI to the body sway and the sheer depth of story. But before we get into Wings of Empire, please like the video if you like it and subscribe if you aren't. And if you want to support the channel any further, please check out my Patreon or Subscribe Star. Links are in the description or my link tree. So everything in the game has a Roman Empire foundation. I loved how Warhammer 40k uses the Roman Empire as a frame for everything in the game. However, Wings of Empire references the Roman Empire in a much more literal way. From everyone's titles to the main character's previous job, you play the ex-Legion soldier who lost a limb in combat and had a choice. You either move to a desk or you join the Imperial Navy. So you take your new prosthetic limb and try your hand at flight school. You end up graduating and joining your new team, all ladies.
Damn, you're fun. Why are you so fun?
On the INS Aquila, a large carrier in the Imperial Navy. Visually, Wings of Empire is a mixed bag. When I said you can tell this is a droid game just by the visuals, this wasn't necessarily a compliment. As far as I know, Droid has used the same VN engine in Unity along with renders and DAZ ever since Love of Magic. I've grown super tired of the dated and clunky UI. The large box at the bottom of the screen just filled with dialogue. It's much more difficult to read than any VN I've played lately. If I increase the font size, the dialogue box takes up half the screen. Even if you reduce the box's visibility. This was always one of my least favorite parts of Love of Magic or Morningstar. Everything feels dated and overly cluttered. When you have to read so much for each render, it makes the game less interesting to look at. The faces are pretty, but the bodies also kind of feel dated. It's hard to explain, but I will say more about this in the backer section. I mean, at least Droid didn't reuse many of the same character models from Love of Magic like he did with Morningstar. Now, the only other thing that needs to be discussed is the battles. These space battles look better than any DAZ game I've seen. There are animations, but in general, it felt like all the space scenes were done with puppets on a strings like the early Star Wars movies. When you really look at an exciting space battle in Wings of Empire and one of the MMA fights in Morningstar, the space battle feels more drab and lifeless. Now, don't get me wrong, what Droid did with these animations is quite impressive. They probably took forever to make, but they need a bit more work for it to feel immersive and realistic. Good news, Wings of Empire has music and sound effects. Now, I'm not sure if this is the case, but it feels like the music hasn't changed since Love of Magic. So I eventually turned off the music and put on my own because it was repetitive and it didn't really do the game justice. There would be a deep emotional scene and the same song is played 15 times already. It kind of kills the atmosphere.
Am I turning you on?
No.
However, the sound effects when jumping through portals or shooting your lasers is really good. If I had to grade the audio, I would probably give it an average grade. However, I ended up putting on my own music faster than I was expecting. Now let's get into the story. As a Warhammer 40k and sci-fi enjoyer, I jumped at the chance to check out sci-fi game from Droid. This game is full of political intrigue and deep lore of the universe, everything from how the Empire solves local planetary disputes to the growing Cold War with the Commonwealth. A couple of years back, there was some sort of TikTok thing where people figured out that men think about the Roman Empire daily, sometimes multiple times per day.
How often do I think about it?
Yeah.
I don't know, I guess technically like every day.
Honestly, probably 2 to 3 times a day.
What?
If you were one of those men, the heavy Roman and military jargon will likely be up your alley. Unfortunately for me,
I don't give a fuck.
all the jargon could be confusing and hurt my connection to the story. Even when you're supposed to be having an emotional conversation with any of the characters, it's filled with jargon. This made most of the scenes and the story arcs feel bland and emotionally disconnected. I mean, long story short about the characters in the story, I just didn't care. Someone dies at one point and it was supposed to be a sad moment, I think. And I was like, wait, who died?
Fine. I'll pretend to be sad.
Lastly, we have to actually talk the battles. I'm going to say it. They aren't good. The battles are all the same. They're incredibly easy and seemingly any of the main girls on your team can't die. I would just send Arya in to tank everything because she would get down to 1 hit point and just not die. Rinse and repeat. The little minigame races are even more frustrating. Besides being incredibly boring to look at, they are frustratingly hard. Luckily, they do get easier if you upgrade your piling stats more, but after a while I would just skip any of the combat or races because they're not very fun. And if you've listened to the channel for any amount of time, you know that I actually like minigames. So what did I think? Honestly, I just don't think this game is for me. From it being a little too heavy-handed with the Roman Empire references, to the overly wordy text, the military jargon, and your lifeless ship, I had a really hard time connecting to the story or the characters. Unfortunately, I don't think the solid technical writing by Droid could make up for many of the other issues. This made me sad, because there were times I felt like I was the only one that enjoyed Morningstar, even with its flaws. So for me, this is a pass. But I fully understand that you may like Wings of Empire a lot more than I did. I want to thank all my backers on Patreon and Subscribe Star, and if you haven't seen Emily's review of Dream Daddy, you can check it out right here. Thanks again. Until next time.